Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Understable Discourse, your go-to place for all the best disc golf content there is out there. And this week, we're going to be looking at the GMC. We have made it to the playoffs. They're here, and they start tomorrow. What is it that you have to know before we get into this? There's a lot. There's a lot on the table. It's a pivotal time for players who haven't made the cut line yet. For those who have made the cut line, this is their chance to improve their position or protect their position to have a better spot for the end of year championship. And these are the final events for players looking to make their case to become player of the year. So we're going to look at the event, we're going to look at the courses, and we're going to look at the players themselves. So let's get into it. Before we continue, I want to talk about the new rules around the playoffs this year. Some things that are brand new because, the DGPT loves putting out new stuff, and some things you should keep in mind as we go into these events. So for the Green Mountain Championship held in Vermont, which is just a beautiful, beautiful place, the top 120 MPO and top 60 FPO players make up the field. I'm sure there are some extras here and there. There always are some people who kind of get in, but it's the top 120 and top 60. And we need to, by the time of the Tour Championship, narrow that field down to 32 MPO players and 20 FPO players. And there are certain ways that we're going to do that. There are 3 different ways you as a player can make it into the Tour Championship. The first is the most direct and straightforward, and that's to be in the top 28 MPO or 18 FPO when it comes to total points after the MVP event is over. So up to this point, players have been playing all year long in regular events, plus events, earning points, and obviously dropping events because you're only allowed to have so many count. And now they've made it to the playoffs, where all the points they make from these 2 events will be included in their playoff points section, and that matters a lot for certain players. So at the end of MVP, which is not this weekend but next weekend, we will have a definitive 28 MPO and 18 FPO who are leading the field. They will all make it to the Tour Championship. The next way you can make it into the Tour Championship is to be one of the top 4 MPO players or top 2 FPO players who finish at the MVP Open that have not already made it into the championship. So let me make that a little bit easier to understand. So let's say we get done at the MVP Open and we look at the top players who finished. And let's say that you have all of the 28 top point scorers for the MPO division. They've all made it in. But let's say the last one of them, number 28, whoever that is, player number 28, they finish in 29th place. That means that somebody who is not in those top 28 finished inside of the top 28. And so what they're going to do is they're going to take the 4 best MPO finishers who did not qualify by points alone, and they're going to allow them into the Tour Championship. So that means that, let's say all 28 finish in 1st through 28th spot. That means the person who finishes in 29th, 30th, 31st, and 32nd will make it into the Tour Championship. And then with FPO, it's the top 2 finishers who have not already made it into it. And why is this significant? It's because at the end of the year, there are players that sometimes maybe haven't had a chance to play a full season via injury, life events, whatever it may be. This is an opportunity for them to play well enough at this playoff event to still make it into the Tour Championship. It's a great chance for them to show that they do belong there from a skill perspective. Now, that comes with inherent issues. Like, obviously, you have a player, let's say, who's been a virtual nobody all season long. They have not played well, and their average play definitely showcases that they are not the kind of player who would have ever earned a spot to make it into the Tour Championship. But they happen to do well and finish in 30th place at the MVP Open, and they make it in. Yes, that stuff can happen. But the idea is that for the players who really deserve a chance to get in, despite not being able to play a full season or whatever it may be, this creates an opportunity for there to be some really definitive play. And honestly, from a viewership perspective, It's great to see who wins the MVP Open. We always love seeing tournament winners, but this gives us a nice narrative to look at as the event is coming to a close of who may or may not be on those bubble spots, who need to get in. And for some players, it's going to make it very, very serious down the stretch. Even if they're sitting in, 30th place at the event, those final holes and the decisions made could be very impactful for the remainder of their season. So I do like it from that perspective. And then the third and final way that you can get into the Tour Championship is if you have not qualified by one of the other two means, but you have won an Elite Series event or major championship this season. I don't think right now there are any players in this grouping that this would matter for. Obviously, I think, I can't remember what place he's in, but if like Jake Hebenheimer would have won D-Glow, I think that would have been impactful for him. I don't remember what position he's in currently. I think he is definitely outside. He's in the 46th position. So that would have mattered for him. He would have made it in. If someone like Ida Letamaki would have won Worlds over Own, she would have made it in to this event. And because she's not playing GMC or MVP, she's not going to be making it in. She doesn't have an opportunity to make it in. Even though she probably could if she came over and played these events, she might stand a chance. So very interesting to see how it's going to play out. But that's kind of how the new setup for playoffs is. And it makes it so that it matters how well you finish. When we look at the courses we're going to be playing this weekend, Smuggler's Notch is just, it's a top tier destination for disc golfers in the country. A lot of players on tour claim that this is one of their favorite stops all year long. And a lot of people would say that this is a must-have destination on any player's bucket list out there. And you can see that in the fact that if you look at UDISC top 100 courses in the world, Brewster and Fox Run are number 7 and 8 respectively. So these two courses both exist inside the top 10 best courses on the planet according to UDisc. That should tell you it's a pretty good place to go out there and stay. In fact, I've looked at it before. You can go out there and you can stay at a really nice resort for the weekend, go play both courses. It's something I'll probably be doing in the next year or two. It looks like too much fun not to enjoy that. But yeah, so we're going to be seeing Fox Run Meadows and Brewster Ridge played this weekend. And the weather's looking pretty beautiful, especially for the MPO field, with it being, I think, in the low 80s on tomorrow, dropping down to the mid 60s for a couple of days, and then hopping back up to the mid 70s to finish off on Sunday. Now for the FPO field, that matters a little bit because for Friday and Saturday, that means their starting temperatures in the morning are going to be fluctuating in like the high 30s and 40s. So it could get a little cold and chilly for them, but largely we're looking to see an event without much rain, which is good because the tee pads historically at both of these venues do not stand up well in the rain. In fact, it's been said before, the tee pads when they're wet at GMC are a bit of a liability for players. So I'm glad to see no rain on the forecast, except for maybe there's always a chance anywhere you go, but it looks like it's going to be a pretty awesome event from a weather perspective. The first course we're going to look at is Brewster Ridge. This is the course they're going to be playing for rounds 1 and 2, and it's one of the shortest courses on tour for the entire field, sitting at only about 8,500 feet for the men and 7,500 feet for the women. And there's just a very heavy focus on hitting the lines, hitting your gaps, and managing low ceilings throughout the course. And there's a lot of, tight wooded holes, and there are some holes that are kind of open with shots into protected greens. So the course doesn't typically, historically, create a lot of scoring separation. It's mostly a dead sprint that you have to score on if you want any chance to win this event. Players who don't get the jobs done in rounds 1 and 2 could very well have played themselves out of a chance at a win on this property. So you got to come out hot and you got to get the job done right away. I think last year the winning score was 46 under par. Now that was with a historic 16 down from Gannon, but there were players that were sitting at like 39, 38. So if you want any chance to win this weekend, I think you have to average probably 9 under or better across the 4 rounds, and you've got to get the job done. You really 2 double-digit under rounds at Brewster, I think, is going to be necessary to win this event, unless you're going to pop off and do something magical at Fox Run. But I think 9 under, 36 down puts you in contention, And as crazy as it may seem, I think the closer you get to 40, the better chance that you have of winning this event overall. However, I think that, we're going to see some interesting things. There have been a couple changes made to the course, especially with holes 16 and 17. Both have had their tee pads pushed back, creating, I think, a much longer and more technical shot to deal with. With hole 17 being the easiest hole historically for MPO and one of the easiest holes for FPO, this should be interesting to see kind of how it plays out. Now, we did just see not that long ago, only I think like 2 hours ago, Nicholas Antala, sealed the deal in match play against Adam Hammes with an ace on 16. So it is very, very much doable. I'll be curious to see if he can replicate that during the event this weekend. But so for the MPO field, though, only 2 holes averaged over par last year, and that were holes 8 and 15, combining to average 0.12 strokes over par. So this is not by any means a difficult course for the modern day MPO field. The players, I think, from MPO and FPO that are going to succeed here are going to have 3 specific character traits. Number 1, they're going to have incredible shot shaping this weekend. To be able to move the disc at the angles they need to, when they need to, is going to be pivotal. Number 2, they're going to have the mental fortitude to stay hot and leave mistakes behind them. On this course, you can't afford to take a bad hole with you to the next tee pad. You've got to let it there, move on, and then when you are scoring well, you got to keep your foot on the gas pedal. And lastly, you have to have solid scrambling skills, because if you do get off the fairway here, you've got to get back on track, and more specifically, you have to know when to take your medicine and just get what you can. Trying to be a hero out here and turning a par into a bogey or a double bogey is just not going to get the job done for you. The other course they're going to be playing is Fox Run Meadows, known for being the harder of the 2 courses. In fact, they'd like to kind of make you think it's a lot harder of the 2. Last year, Fox Run is credited by the Pro Tour as being the course that created the most scoring separation of any course on tour. I'll be honest with you, I really want to see the stats behind that, because it just doesn't feel that way when you look at the course and how it played last year. Only 3 to 4 holes averaged over par, and some of the holes even averaged birdie rates of 60% or higher, with 2 holes averaging birdie rates of over 80%. So it doesn't feel like this course has the scoring separation that they're claiming it is, and I think we'll be looking into that during the off season to kind of figure out how they determine scoring separation and what that really truly means. But it is harder technically than Brewster Ridge, and some of the changes they made will make the course a little bit harder, but I don't think it's going to be that much harder than Brewster Ridge, maybe by a couple strokes, and that's about it. One of the things they did this year also is they added a little bit of distance. It's only about 1,000 feet longer than Brewster for both the men and the women, so it's still a pretty small course in general. We have some changes though. So on hole 7, which is the typical long 1,300 foot par 5 for the men, they decided to push that basket back to a more straight position and like I said, move it back a little bit. And Yuli and some of the other pros that have seen it have expressed their enjoyment with the new setup, saying it's a lot better way to use the space. That's good. Hole 18 is another one that's now been extended from a longer par 3 into a multi-shot par 4. However, both Ezra and Goose in their practice round kind of expressed that the change is good, but it could end up in resulting in more pars than anything else because of the way the hole is designed and how tight the OB is on the basket. And it's kind of odd to me, I'll be honest with you, that they would target one of the most parred, and in fact, I believe it is the most parred hole on the course, and just make it more likely to surrender pars. You would think they would take one of the easier holes and kind of play around with that a little bit, but they took one of the harder holes, and not harder, I want to clarify it, not harder because it gets a lot of bogeys, harder just because it's parred by like 65% of the field, so it's just not surrendering birdies. So just because a hole surrenders very few birdies doesn't mean it's a hard hole. It just might mean that the way the hole is designed, it doesn't really benefit players to go for birdie. So it's not that it's difficult, it's just that the hole is not designed to entice players to go for anything. So very interesting why they chose hole 8 to do that too. Hole 11 is one of the changes where it's a par 4 where, The tee shot was kind of, you're throwing it as far as you can, trying to avoid the OB on the left before you enter a small gap to go downhill towards the basket. One of the things the Pro Tour has been doing this year a lot is narrowing OB on the course, and we see that here where they've taken the OB line on the left in the typical landing area and they've pushed it out further to the right, making that shot that we've seen most players use in the past dangerous now. So a lot of players are going to have to choose to either go even more aggressive off the tee, which is not likely to be the case, or they're going to have to lay up a little bit shorter of where they used to throw to, which will add difficulty on the approach shot into the green. I like this change. I don't know that I like it from we're just jutting the OB out into the fairway. Maybe it'd be more fun to cut the fairway into two pieces and have it be some kind of a forced carry instead. You could debate on that, which one you'd rather see. But I like that they're forcing the second shot to be a little bit harder than it was. Don't get me wrong, I love seeing guys blast shots as far as they possibly can, but it's nice to see players have to make a conscientious decision on the tee pad where they're going to go from a distance perspective. And that can be seen really well with the last change we're going to talk about, which is hole 12. Probably the biggest change for the course in terms of MPO. Not a lot of things changed for the FPO division here this weekend, but the MPO definitely saw some changes. What they did was they took the old tee for MPO, which was a par 5, and they've moved that up to where the FPO tee pad is at. It's a par 5 for the FPO, but they've left it a par 4 for the MPO. And what this did is it took one of the easiest holes on the course by a mile, a hole that surrendered several eagles every single time we saw it played, and they have this big forced carry in the center now. So you have to make a decision whether or not you're going to try to carry that off the tee pad, lay up short of it, and then it makes your second shot harder. It was described, the old hole 12, as being the kind of hole where you could mess up one of your shots and still walk away with a birdie. Now you have to execute 2 solid shots to get any opportunity to birdie on this hole. I like this change a lot, because if you want to, like, the eagle chance is there for the crazy person who wants to really, really go for it. However, the birdie isn't the easiest thing to get anymore. So I will be looking at the stats of this whole change afterwards, because I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out from a statistical perspective. So to be successful at Fox Run, players are going to need to be great off the tee, really understand where their landing zones are at, what distances they want to accomplish. They're going to be very intentional when they throw their tee shots. That's the first thing. Number 2, I think we're going to have to see some good competency from Circle 2. A lot of the holes out here, you could find yourself in C2 looking at the basket a lot, so having a good Circle 2 performance will be clutch. And then finally, with this being the last 2 courses they're going to play, players are going to need the ability to discern when to be aggressive and when to hit the brakes. Because there are a lot of opportunities on these courses, especially Fox Run, of where you need to be conscientious of how aggressive you're playing and realize that sometimes you need to take the harder line and get aggressive. And sometimes you have to slow it down. And as players, we're in the playoffs now, being able to play well matters a lot, because there are players who are outside that cut line who are trying to get in, and surrendering it all, going for gusto at the end of the round and missing out on any points at all could be very detrimental. So we're going to see how that all plays itself out. When we look at the actual field, I think we see some interesting things. For the MPO, there's really no contention for Player of the Year at this point. It doesn't feel like, at the very least, unless something crazy would happen, but I highly doubt that we're going to see anything like that. The FPO, though, this I think matters a lot for a number of the contenders, and there's a lot of storylines that have to be discussed. You know, with Kristen Lott's exit from the tour, we've seen it now for a few weeks. There's a lot of pressure on players like Holland Hanley to perform well. So I'm excited to see what she can do this weekend, but I'll be honest with you, I don't have a lot of confidence in her game right now to be a top-level contender at these courses. She's perfectly capable of doing so, but a lot of eyes are on Holland and where she's at, and if she wants any chance at winning this Player of the Year award, she's going to have to pick up a win, and this could be the event that gets that done for her. But I like her better next weekend than I do this weekend. Next on that list is someone like Silva Saarinen, who put down an incredible performance last weekend to rise up to where she finished at. And we saw her last year finish in a tie and take second here at GMC to Kristen. So Silva, I would say, is probably the outright favorite in terms of who's the most consistent best player on tour right now for the FPO field, and has experience on the course. So I expect to see great things from Silva this weekend. And once again, kind of the same boat. I think if she takes down the win here at GMC, she locks up Player of the Year for herself. She hasn't won recently, so she doesn't kind of have that "what have you done for me lately" thing that you kind of need sometimes to win this award. But a win this weekend would, I think, move mountains for her becoming Player of the Year. Speaking of players who have the "what have you done for me lately," you've got Missy Gannon and Owen Scoggins, and both who I think are incredible contenders on both of these courses. Owen just being the kind of player who can carve it up left, right, and center. And I believe truly that a win for Owen or Missy this weekend puts them in the front runner seat for Player of the Year candidacy. Even though Owen has a few less wins to her name, she does have a world championship. And even though technically the Masters World Championship doesn't count towards, the Pro Tour stats, these votes are done by people, done by media, and there's a lot of favoritism when it comes to stuff like that, and it will be in people's minds. I mean, think about it. If you have two players and both, you can't decide between the two of them, but one of them has a second world title this year in the Masters division, it does tend to lean you in their direction, whether you like it or not. It's kind of unconscious at that point. So a win from either of those two would be huge to see. But we've got some other players in the field who I think can shake some waves, between like Valerie Mandujano. I think we're back in the realm of where Cadence Burge becomes a legitimate contender at these courses. And Evelina Salonen is back in the field. I'd love to see her perform really well. We've not seen much out of her this year because she's just not been around this year. So hopefully we get to see more of her next year. But some big attention for her would be great. We saw her have a lot of success at these like wooded courses that require tight lines when it comes to U.S. women's this year. So she could be primed for a really good finish this upcoming weekend. And then you got players who we've been waiting kind of all year for, like Kat Murch. Where has she been? I think that Annika Sten is a good contender here on this course. Going down the leaderboard, you have to also look at the people who are on the bubble. And I would say the biggest name that jumps out at me is Sofia Donica. So with Kristen kind of stepping off the tour, Jessica Weiss now finds herself just inside the cut line, but only by about 30 points. And so we got Sofia Donica, you got Lisa Fakis, and Alexis Mandujano that are all within 15 points of each other on the outside looking in right now. And I like Sofia Donica on this course. I think she's been playing relatively well recently. So I think we could see her make a push here and find herself on the other side of the cut line after just the GMC event. We're going to be watching after this event really closely because this first one is kind of just who is there and whatnot. But going into MVP, we're really going to matter who is in there and what people are inside or outside. And we'll be looking at that extremely specifically next week when we have our episode detailing the MVP Open. But I would say this week for me, I'm going to go ahead and give the win to, I think Silva is going to get the job done similarly to last year. So I think Silva Saarinen is going to win this event, but we're going to see Missy Gannon and Owen Scoggins in a very, very tight race behind them. And I'd say if we're doing a flyer pick, be on the lookout for, I'm going to say Annika Sten. Be on the lookout for Annika Sten to make some waves this weekend, and that's what I have for the FPO side. Over on the MPO side of things, there is no race for Player of the Year. Gannon Buhr is going to win Player of the Year, and guess what? It's another 4-round event, and we've seen, I think Gannon has won 7 of the last 8 4-round plus events. He is incredibly talented when it comes to long, lengthy events, and he set records here last year, dominating the field by, I think, 6 strokes or so. So, I'm not going to go any further other than to say that I have Gannon Buhr winning this event. Congratulations, Gannon. Well done. But there are players who could definitely, I think, shake that a little bit. Calvin is up there in my mind as someone who could get the job done. He kind of searching for another win this season. I don't really, believe it or not, have AB. He's just not been a super impressive player the last few events. I just don't know that the down pace of the course is going to be great, well suited for him. I know he dominated a match play today, but that's match play. It's not the event. It's a very, very different thing. Isaac Robinson's another player who I think can be really, contentious out there this weekend with his shot shaping skills, his ability to make good decisions on the course. Same thing with Niklas Antala having a lot of success. We have to look at players like Paul Macbeth, but I think one of the players that is on everyone's mind is Ricky Wysocki, who we saw put a really great push this last event at D-Glow in for the win, and Ricky has had a lot of success at GMC. I would say it's probably one of his best events ever. I think he's won like 5 GMCs or something like that. So all eyes are going to be on Ricky if he can get it done this weekend. I think he is definitely going to be in contention, and there are a few other players who have the ability to be successful, but we're going to see what happens. I think we're going to have a great event with a lot of players who are going to do really, really well. We have to look, though, like I said, at the cut line. You've got Austin Turner, who is just inside the cut line with a little bit of a gap opened up. After him, we got Andrew Presnell, who is just outside looking in, and guess what? These courses, I think, fit Presnell's game really well. Same thing with Silas Schultz, who's right there. Vino Makala is sitting in 31st, but we know that he's taking a break from the tour right now. I hope everything is all going well for Vino. But Ben Callaway is right there. We have Maury Vilman, who I think is going to be an absolute sleeper pick here, because he's technically 70 points back from being across that cut line, but the guy just hasn't played a lot this year because he hasn't come over to the US, and we've seen how well he's played over in Europe. I believe he's going to be here at the event this weekend, and he's trying to make a playoff push. You got to keep your eye on Maury Vilman, even though he has not played, I believe, these events before. Some notable other players, Matty O sitting well outside the cut line by quite a heavy margin of almost 80 points. Paul Ulibarri sitting even further back by almost 90 points. So Kevin Jones, Jesse Nieminen, Alden Harris. There's some players down here, Jake Hemenheimer with the way he's been playing. There are some really solid players who I think could have a lot of success at this venue and put themselves in a position to have MVP really matter. But that remains to be seen with how the weekend goes. But like I said, I got Gannon Burr winning the entire event. I'm going to have Ricky Wysocki coming in second place. And in third, I'm feeling Isaac Robinson. And my flyer pick is definitely going to be Maury Vilman. So pay attention to how they're going to play this weekend. I think we're going to see a wonderful event. I love GMC. It's a really beautiful set of 2 courses, challenging a different skill set for a lot of players. But hey, that's what we have for this week. I hope you're excited to watch the first playoff event of the year. Let me know down below in the comments who you're looking for. Who's outside the cut line looking in that you think has a real solid opportunity between the next 2 events to make it inside that cut line? And who do you think on the bubble inside the cut line might not be able to hold on to their current position? Let me know in the comments section down below. Leave a like on the video, and if you really like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button. It's the best way you can support the growth of this channel. I really appreciate it if you do that. But that's it for us right now. Make sure that we go into this weekend, that you play some disc golf, you watch some disc golf, and until next time, this has been Understable Discourse.